being autistic doesn't mean that you're broken. Or having any type of disability does not make you broken or less than or incapable of, you know, doing anything. Like I
Welcome to the Unapparent Podcast, the place that delivers deeply human stories about the unapparent truths of parenting. My name is Katia Reguero Lindor, and I am your host. Join us as we debunk myths surrounding parenthood and provide an empathetic, judgment-free space for parents and parents to be. We hope you enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Unapparent Podcast. Today, our guest is very special. Her name is Daciné. I met her through my sister-in-law, actually, virtually met her. Daciné is going to talk to us about all things autism and in her own experience with her daughter, but also as a professional. So, Daciné, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about what it is you do or getting trained for and how all of that came about in your life?
Yes. So I am training to become a board certified behavior analyst. Um, and that directly deals with behavior. It deals with shaping uh, typically people with autism or autistic individuals. It could be maybe OCD. It could be a full range of things. It's just not autism. Um, but what I went into the field for was because of my daughter, Skylar. She is 9 now, but our journey started back when I want to say when she was about 3. Um, I noticed the little change differences between her and my oldest daughter and her twin. She's actually a twin sister. So there are very clear differences as far as her interactions with her siblings, interactions with me, eye contact, the way that she even plays with toys and uh, things like that. And even her speech. So what got me into that was the fact that I needed help. And in at the time, there was not a lot of resources. There was probably one or two clinics. There was maybe one or two nonprofit organizations that would have trainings, parent trainings, resources that families such as myself who really didn't know which way to go uh, that would be able to, help assist me into getting things like potty training or just to get her to do simple transitions to just stop her from, something as simple as like, well, we have to go.
Right.
So those were the type of challenges that I figured that I would have to probably tackle and find a way to help her progress. So I started my journey of uh, ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis. Um, I started that just real loosely. I would go to the library and, spend time trying to find books, trying to find any type of information that would at least give me some type of guidance to help her. I would sit in parent training classes that would help me do simple daily living skills, even sign language. So when I finally was able to afford to get her into ABA training, um, the clinic, her BCBA encouraged me to pursue this field because a lot of the things that I was already doing with her, she had kind of some type of foundation, and she encouraged me because as a woman of color, uh, as a uh, as a parent, like it's very frustrating to have a diagnosis or see something wrong with your child and you're not able to help them. You're not able to um, have all the answers. So that took me through I enrolled in school and here I am.
Wow. Yeah.
Um,
That's very admirable. I mean,
yeah.
and as a parent, I can personally attest to like it's stressful as it is, right? Being a parent to, neurotypical individuals. So, I mean, it's really wow. I'm curious about your experience getting the diagnosis, like how uphill was that? What were some of the challenges you faced?
Um, doctors wouldn't listen.
Mhm.
Um, I was not listened to because even though she was not at the typical age that they would give a diagnosis at that time, since then it's changed. Like they even dropped the diagnosis age down to, or evaluation ages down to like 2, I think.
Mhm. It used to be older.
So yes, it
Mm.
was at the time, back in 2017. I want to say they wouldn't start diagnosing until like after 4.5.
Okay.
And we had already, she was doing self-injurious behavior. She was being aggressive with her sister, aggressive with me. Um, doctors just wouldn't listen. So that it took me about a year and a half to get a full diagnosis, a full evaluation. Um, and back at that time, I wasn't working. So I was also on Medicaid. And Medicaid in Texas did not cover for those services. So it was a huge battle, to say the least. And one of the many families who was on that same boat. But uh, the process with that was I went through the Autism Community Network. They had a wait list, of course. And when we finally got in, that's when everything, like all the doors opened up for us. Like every single resource, everybody that had anything to do with ABA or anything like that came flooding my way. So I really had no idea just how underserved, this community was until I had to actually start looking and trying to figure out like what can I do to at least get her to where she needs to be. So it took a while. It
Yeah.
was a very like uphill battle, especially like going back and forth to the doctors, trying to figure out like what is the diagnosis. So it was very frustrating trying to get doctors to listen, just hear me out, So
Oh, that sounds so
yeah.
difficult. They're the professionals that you would hope would be the first to listen, right? So it's really frustrating that that was not the case. So now that you've
Yeah.
been through that experience and you probably are quite the expert by now, what's I guess a really important initial piece of advice you could give to parents who are either seeking a diagnosis or aren't sure if what they notice, in their children, it merits a like what is something, a piece of advice you can give to parents right off the bat, starting out?
Listen to your gut. If you are not uh if you see something that is not typical, or if you know like, hey, my child is struggling, um listen to your gut. And also um shed any type of biases that you have as far as what's to come, or what you think your child should look like or be like or any of that. So um listen to yourself. You know your child, you know what's normal, what's not for your child. um and also let go of any ableist ideologies that you have, because that will stop you from being able to grow, being able to take feedback, being able to take any type of help. um and it also hurts, your child in the long run if you don't embrace what is and learn to grow from that and adapt. So that is a, a unspoken, challenge, but it is a very real challenge. um you have to drop fear. You got to drop that too. You have to let go of what you think, and be an empty cup and be ready to be, filled with information, filled with all kinds of knowledge, because it's a different world. And you have to also be on the lookout for how to make your world a little bit more accessible to your child. So, just dropping what you think you really know. That's
Yeah.
that's been the biggest journey.
That's
What you think you know, you don't know.
right. And I'm guessing there is a natural, normal grieving process that comes with this shedding and accepting and growing into, a new mindset, right? So I can imagine that maybe that's not talked about enough for parents that have newly diagnosed children, right? And I guess I'd like to open the space, since I personally can attest to that. But you can, right, to speak to maybe those parents who are going through perhaps this grieving process of what they thought would be, their life with this child.
Yeah. It isn't talked about. I mean, it was something that I personally had to um, go through myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't more so like my child shouldn't be this way,
Mm-hmm.
because who am I? You know what I mean? Like, that is not up to me. Um, my fear was more stemmed in my own capabilities, my own insecurities. Like, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, how do I help? How do I help my baby? Uh, how do I know, like, I didn't do anything wrong? Dad didn't do anything wrong, and I did everything that I was supposed to do to have this healthy, thriving child. Um, it was very difficult. I had to do a whole lot of soul searching. I had to uh, really buckle down and just understand, like, yeah, these are the cards that she's been dealt with. Like, she's been dealt, and the world is changing. I have to change with her. Um, so that started with myself, and pushing that philosophy to those around me, because if it's not going to work if it's just me,
Right.
saying, hey, this is how we have to do it. I had to change myself in order to uh, roll the tide with everybody. That included grandma, that included dad, that included friends, family, anybody that came into our happy space, our safe space. Don't come in there with, don't come here with that. That this is not a pity party. This is not a uh any of that. We're not doing any of that. She's fine.
Yeah.
We just have to do things differently. She learns differently. We all do on some level. We all do things a little differently. So the grieving process is a very real process, but what it just goes back to what I was saying. What you think you know, you don't know. And life is going to happen, and you just have to be open to it. And the first thing is just you got to let it go. It sounds cliche, but that's really the biggest thing I can say. Just, you have to let it go. You have to look at it's beyond you. You have to look forward, have that progressive mindset.
Yeah. And that's all we can do really as parents
That's
in
all.
general. They come
Mm.
as their own people, and we can try to control as much as we want, but we can't really control their little people with their own, they come with their set of skills, with their own mindset, and that's the way, it is. And I can imagine your challenges, are look differently for in some capabilities. But again, our children are all different, and
Yes.
letting go of our need to control things is a big lesson I've had to learn as a parent in general. It's really, I didn't realize I had this need to control until I became a mom.
Hmm.
It's been hard for me on some levels as well. But I want to ask you, this is particularly an episode where I'm here to learn, and I want all of our listeners to learn. So what is something, or many things, I'm sure. What's one of like the or some of the biggest lacks in our society that is accepting or embracing or supportive of this community that it's not like it's not common. I want to say, like, I just feel like there's so much lack of information that people don't know how to be supportive, and it's maybe doesn't come from a place of intentional, I guess, like, you're not trying to be mean, but it's our job as a society to inform ourselves, right? And to be better, for, all communities. So, can you, it's not your job, but I'm so grateful that you're here to educate us, and speak to what it is that we need to do better as a society.
Um, I will say listen to the autistic community, listen to uh not just the autistic community, but just any community that is facing that type of inequity or inequality. I would love to see like just simple things like more accessible, playgrounds, uh, more sensory inclusive schools. Just starting out with the education system. I I don't think that social emotional learning shouldn't be uh, off the table just for, or off the table for gen ed children. I think it should be something that all kids should know. I would love to see different laws. just the different laws. uh oh
Let's be
yeah.
yeah, say it. What, maybe right off the top of your head, what laws would you change?
um Honestly, I would just change just how the public school system is just, it's not the best
Mhm.
when it comes down to special education.
Yeah.
That would probably be where I start. I have struggled with uh teachers, special ed teachers, that I think that should have that training. If you're going to deal with a certain population, you should have that training. There should be more diversity training. Um, um, that would be something I would implement. Any special education teacher should have any type of ABA training, or that should be implemented with continuing education. Because I've been faced with teachers that sometimes don't know how to deal with a child that is aggressive or is not acting in the most socially acceptable way. I've had to deal with that with my own child. You know, uh, Making sure that um, it is, as far as how. Ooh, I hate to go there, but I hate the way that even the law enforcement deals with certain individuals in that community. It's the whole aspect of this is uh, this is a behavioral, this is not drug induced or anything, and autism does not look like it doesn't have a stereotype, so anybody could be on the spectrum. Anybody could be struggling with any type of mental, physical, whatever. But I think that there just needs to be more diversity training. There needs to be more inclusive trainings in establishments that are expected to have those, resources. And school will be a very strong, a very strong starting point.
Again, we go back to education is at the forefront, and how are you going to provide the best education for children if these things aren't in place, right? They
Exactly.
sound basic when you say them, and yet they are not. Like, it's not our reality. Our public school system does not have that. And would you say, and pretty sure this is a rhetorical question, but for our listeners, do communities of color have even less access to resources within the autism community and all of the
Yes.
of the world of, I guess, ableism?
Yes. 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 I will say, and just speaking from the Black community,
Mhm.
we believe in disciplining our children. That was one thing I had to really drive deep into, my family's head. Like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're not spanking. We're not doing any of those things. But just yes, it is a very, very unspoken issue in our community. The resources are scarce to none. There's not many BCBAs that look like me. Um, there are not many uh, behavior technicians that look like me. So the field is very uneven when it comes down to people of color. Uh, and that's lacking because every culture is different. Everybody is different, across the board. And there should be more access to each community, for the Latino community, for the Black community, for the Asian community, all communities. So that's very important as well. I That's another reason why I have stuck with it, because it's hard to take sometimes it's hard to take advice, and it's hard when that person might not have that same experience, or the nuances of culture, come into play. So that's been a struggle sometimes, having to navigate that. Um, so I would say yes, the our a lot of color communities of color, even in San Antonio where I am, it is a heavily Hispanic community. But you don't see a lot of Hispanic BCBAs. You don't see a lot of Hispanic RBTs, or people in leadership that run these places. So it's just
A
a
disparity
uneven playing.
that's
Like, yes, yes. So
yeah.
and with that it comes underserved populations of people,
Hmm.
overlooked.
Yeah.
So that is
Uh, a
a
big
big problem.
hole in, yeah. Um, what's something that you wish more people knew or understood about autism?
That there isn't a typical look to autism, and being autistic doesn't mean that you're broken. Or having any type of disability does not make you broken or less than, or incapable of, you know, doing anything. Like, I hate to see that most people that you see in that may have a disability, they are not placed in spaces of employment that are uh that can produce a livable wage. Like, you know, um, I wish that society was more accepting. I really do. I wish that, man, that's a deep question. that's that's a heavy question.
Yeah.
It's so many things that people need to know about just differences, and just be open. I wish more people were along the lines of just ready to accept and adapt.
Yeah.
So that's a big one for me. I always wonder, like, what is the world going to look like when my children are supposed to go out into this world. What is it going to look like for them? Like, what opportunities are going to be presented for them? What kind of life experiences, in society are awaiting for them. And that's scary, because in 2024, we do not have a very inclusive, diverse world. I mean, we're trying to get there, but it's such a small ticking road to uphill road we're going up. And I just that worries me sometimes. So I wish that the world was way more accepting and pushing forward quickly with the change,
Yeah.
with getting on board with the rest of what's actually happening out here.
I love how you
Mm.
phrase it. You said ready to, open and ready to be accepting, which is, that's key. Once you can accept things as they are, it's a lot easier to kind of get there and progress, right? And grow and yeah, that's major. I have one question that I'm sure could be beneficial for everyone listening. What let's see, how do I phrase this? I guess if you had like a friend whose child you sort of noticed that had signs of autism, is that something you would bring up at all, or and if so, how? Like, how do you bring that up to a fellow parent?
Um, I will say I haven't personally approached anyone about that. I've always had like friends and family approach me about it.
Mhm.
I would always start off with, I would ask them, what do you think? How what do you think first? Um, and I would let them know, like, hey, um, this is where kids typically are at this age. Is this child doing this? If not, then maybe you should look into maybe speech therapy, or some type of therapy to get them started and where they're lacking. But always follow up with your pediatrician. Always follow up with your doctor. And if you're not getting the answers that you think that are productive, or that's going to push you forward in getting help, take a second opinion, change doctors, but find somebody that is going to listen and be ready for what may or may not come with that. Um, I've actually had family members, ask me, like, what do you think? And I'm like, I always say, hey, I am just a mom. I am just a parent. But this is where my child was at this age. This is what happened. This is, we can always compare, but it's always best to go seek out like an evaluation. Seek out the a doctor's opinion.
Yeah.
Um and don't procrastinate. Don't procrastinate on it. Act on it. If you think something's wrong, say something. If you see something, say something. That's the only way things are going to get done. It's the only way that you're going to know as a parent.
Yeah.
And it comes with a whole lot of scary stuff. And I also say, uh, invest in your own therapy.
Hmm.
Invest in your own self therapy for yourself, because that's a lot to take on,
Yeah.
especially if you're a single parent, especially if you're uh, a new parent. Take care of yourself as well. So those go hand in hand. I say,
100%.
listen, follow yourself, follow your own instincts as a parent, and um, sometimes you got, if other people are noticing, don't be in denial. you
Yeah.
know be realistic. If your child's 4 years old and they're not talking,
Mhm.
there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Or you know if they are not well, they don't like to really say this, but there are certain behaviors. If they're not social, they don't want to deal with anybody else, or if they are just always to themselves, that's not typical for social socially social people. Like, we're humans. We're supposed to be social. And that starts typically at a young age. We want to keep eye contact. We love that. We love eye contact. We love facial expressions and showing that you're interested in this conversation. You know what I mean? If a child is not doing any of that, that's a that's an indicator right there that, you need to start asking some questions. Uh, at every checkup, they give you a checklist that you go through. Is my child doing this, this, and this? If you're saying no to a lot of those questions, you need to stop and talk to that doctor. And if they're not looking at those evaluations and asking you questions, then you need to switch doctors. You need to switch the whole scenario. If your doctor's not asking you questions on your child's progress, or if what you're asking isn't aligning up, something the math ain't mathing.
Yeah.
You need to find better resources, different resources, and somebody that will listen to you, because somebody's out there that will.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to have community, for all of these reasons and more. That's so key. I can't stress that enough, having community, whoever, that is feeling like you have community, people you trust, people who, want the best for you and your child and will tell you the truth, even if it's maybe hard to hear.
And teachers.
And
Your
teachers, yeah.
Yes, they will listen to them as well, the educators, because they're with your child.
Yeah.
So
which goes back to, if we had more teachers that were trained to, I'm not going to repeat it, but you did say that very eloquently, and that's the reality. Yeah, that's a big one. I guess another question that I wanted to ask you about your specifically, right, your child. I guess backtrack a little bit. I haven't asked you the terminology of masking, right? I've read about this, I've heard about it, and I've read it's a little more prevalent in girls. Could you maybe explain a little bit what that is, and then what that, how you alleviate that with your child?
Yeah. Masking is basically what we do. Like, you have your own little tics that you might not want other people to see. So we cover those things up. You might fidget, you might, bite your lip or things like that. That will like calm you down, stimulate bring your senses down and kind of regulate you. Individuals with autism, they will do what they call stereotyping, where they do the same thing over and over, or stimming is what that's called. And basically what masking is the covering up of those behaviors. So specifically with Skylar, she is a very active girl. She likes to rock, and she likes to, play with her hands and all of that good stuff. When she is in front of other people, she won't do that. So on the outside, it doesn't look like, oh, she's autistic. But we know, like, oh, okay, we know what's going on. But on the outside, someone looking in, you wouldn't know. So when we would go to doctor's appointments and things like that, she would mask her. She would mask very well. She would answer questions. She would be socially acceptable, in public, but a completely different person behind closed doors. So that's the best way I can explain.
And that's another
masking.
reason why, and I've read that girls are typically better at masking, right, than boys. And not only that, a lot of the studies on the autism have been made with the male brain, right? So I feel like things I've read, I recall that the reason girls either aren't diagnosed at all or are diagnosed much later are because of these things. How much better girls are at masking, right? And then how the medical studies have not really studied the female brain. So can you can attest to that, I'm sure.
Definitely can. Yeah. That was a big reason why I struggled with getting her a diagnosis. with her developmental pediatrician. Like I said, we would come into these appointments and I'm like, hey, she's doing this X, Y, and Z, and she'll sit there like there's none will be the wiser. We would know anything of it. And as soon as we walk out, she's full doing the Skylar. So
Yeah.
so yes, it is. I will say that more studies have been coming out on the female brain, even with women with ADHD. I'm a woman I've been diagnosed with ADHD.
Mm-hmm. Same.
So a lot of I will say particularly women of color, our ADHD comes out, or our anxiety comes out. It manifests as like irritability or anger, standoffishness, but honestly, we're like really, our brains are on fire.
Overstimulated galore.
Overstimulated. So,
yep.
Yes, it manifests in different ways. We have poor time management. We forget things, all that. So,
that's been a huge, for me, it's been so validating. Even because, okay, backtrack. When I was about 13, I asked my mom to take me to get an ADHD diagnosis because I knew that I had ADHD. And she listened to me. My mom, she listened to me. She took me. The doctor was like, nope, there's no way this girl has ADHD, And so it was kind of like disregarded because this one doctor, granted, I didn't insist on a second opinion and my mom sort of just took this doctor's word for it. But I grew up in Puerto Rico where there was probably a lot less information about it at the time. I guess I was also just, there was also just this misconception of what ADHD even was, right, at the time. So the fact that I could sit through a session, have this completely normal, probably above average, for my age conversation with this doctor, he was just wrote me off like, no, she's super normal, right? Like normal, and I'm just like, okay, well, I guess something's wrong with me, but it's not ADHD, right? I knew there was something, different about my brain and the way it functioned. But I grew up just shaming myself, thinking that maybe I'm just lazy, or maybe I'm just this, or maybe like labeling myself with all of these negative words that just informed me in my own brain of my lacks, of what I would never be able to accomplish. And as a mom, when I had my first child, and I was in therapy because I had postpartum depression, it was this aha moment that I had with my therapist where I decided to tell her these things, and she was like, tell me more. And we had a few more sessions. She's like, oh, 100% you have ADHD, and you've known it your whole life, but it was just, you worded it differently to yourself because you were told you didn't have it, at a young age. And so it's wild to think that, I've had it my whole life probably, and I didn't have validation for it till I was an adult, already a mom, facing additional challenges as a mom, And so everything you said, the irritability, the anger, I just, my mom always said, you're sunshine and daisies. And then you sometimes are like, like it's really hard when, as a kid, because you get angry. And I thought I had anger management problems, And so,
Girl.
And I'm reparenting myself, I'm still figuring it out, and I'm still trying to figure out how to, get the tools to deal with, this aspect of myself, So yeah, that was a little bit of a story about me, right? So yeah.
I feel you. We've been there, girl.
Mm-hmm.
I was diagnosed probably 2 years ago on having ADHD.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, wow, all the times I've been in trouble at school, all the times I felt like I don't want to do this homework, or I will wait until forever to like, yes. So I fully understand.
Yeah.
I daily struggle.
Oh, yeah.
And these kids ain't making it no easier.
I mean, for real, at least my temper, dealing with my temper plus my toddler's temper is seems like a
Yes,
recipe for a disaster, but
girl.
we're hanging
I
in
sit
there.
there. I sit and I do a timeout corner for myself. Like this little room I'm in is my timeout space
Mm-hmm.
slash like little studio or whatever. But
Right.
yes, ABA's helped. Like I give my own little like you need to do this. I set my timers. I do all of that. So
Well,
I
I'm making mental notes.
understand.
Yeah. I really I
I
came to realize that this time, my podcast,
Mhm.
it's a really just healing time for me because I get to
Oh
dedicate,
yes.
time to me. I have a little break. Even I'm talking all things parenting, right? And so I'm
Mhm.
talking about my struggles in a way that I'm like, well, additional to my ADHD, like set that aside, parenting in itself is just, it's really, it's hard, it's challenging, it's beautiful, it's all of the emotions, and being able to embrace that all of these emotions can coexist, and that does not make us bad parents. It does not make us, love our children any less. It's really part of it, and creating a community for parents who feel this way and are feeling shame for feeling this way, that's what this is
Mhm.
all about. And so, with that, I also want to just thank you again, because while this is your daily life, you deal with these challenges on the daily, and it is our job as a society to be better for our communities. I'm so grateful that you have come on, my podcast to educate us
Yeah.
about, all of these things that are so important for us to know and care about. So, I'm so grateful to you for taking time out of your day and talking to us and educating us. So we're about at the end of our time, but I want to open the floor for you to add anything that you feel is really important for us to know or hear about.
Yes. Take care of yourself. Take care of you. That's my biggest thing. I know it sounds selfish. I know mom guilt is rampant.
Mhm.
It is parent guilt is rampant, but you have to take time to fill your own cup.
Yeah.
So I love that I was a part of this
Oh,
and it is filling my own little cup. So
oh,
thank you so much.
thank you.
But yes, girl, get out that house. If you can get rid of them kids, get rid of them.
Yeah. I mean,
Book a flight somewhere, get away.
it
I
it's taken me
take care of you.
yeah, it's taken me a long time to learn this the hard way. Like if you don't take care of you, how are you going to give your kids the best of you, right? Because you need to
Yes,
be your best
yes,
version to give them your best version.
absolutely.
So that is something that I think we're all learning or have to learn at some
Mhm,
point, because it is
mhm.
key. So, yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
that is, I do that every day, at least once a day, 15 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
care of you.
Well, thank you, Daciné. It's been such a pleasure.
Yes, it has. Thank you so much for having me on here. I enjoyed every minute.
If there's any website or social media account that you want to leave for our listeners where they can find you, please do so.
Yes,
Mhm.
I am on Instagram at Just These Kids Mama. I have a website, justthesekidsmama.com. And please be on the lookout for more ABA and parent intervention techniques that I will be putting on the website. So
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you. Till next time. Gracias, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Unapparent Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe as we release a new episode at least every month with an exciting new guest. Be sure to also follow us on Instagram for all the unapparent content you never knew you needed.